Today I'm looking at the track Made of Stone by the Stone Roses, and this one's been on my to-do list for quite some time, and a few people have requested it as well. So I've actually only looked at one Stone Roses track previously on this channel, and that was She Bangs the Drums, I think, but that was a few years ago, so it's about time I did another one. And this one's lots of fun to play. I'm going to begin by playing through the entire track. And I've had to make a few decisions about how to approach this one. On the original recording there's quite a lot going on, so what I've tried to do is put together a nice playable version that you can do on just one guitar. So let me play it through and then I'll break down what's going on. So there we are. This is a fantastic song, some really nice John Squire guitar work. And this one came out in 1989. It was on the first Stone Roses album. I think it was also released as a single as well. And as I just said, there's quite a lot going on the original recording. I've no idea how many guitar tracks there would be on this recording, but it wouldn't surprise me if there were a dozen or so on there. So I've had to try and unpick exactly what's going on. And my version of this is really a combination of the main parts that I'm hearing on the original recording. And I've also been listening to some live stuff as well. So I'm approaching some of this in a similar way to how John Squire does it when he plays the song live. Anyway, let me break this down for you, and I'm going to try and go into an adequate amount of detail. I won't be able to describe every single note and every single lick, but hopefully it'll be fairly clear what's going on. There will be a tab available on my Patreon page for those of you who would be interested in that. So let's get started. This one is in the key of E minor, and I've chosen to play this with a capo at the 2nd fret. And I think this is probably how most of the parts on the original recording are played, with this capo, but it wouldn't surprise me if there were some tracks in there played without a capo. And interestingly, when you look at live footage, in the earliest performances John Squire is using a capo, but then in some later performances he's playing it in the same key but without a capo. So in fact there are a number of ways that you can approach doing this one, but for this lesson today I'm going to be using the capo. Let's kick off with this amazing opening riff then. So really this is all based around an E minor kind of a sound, so you might like to think about this E minor bar chord. We're actually just playing some 3-note shapes on the top 3 strings, and we've got this kind of descending line played on the high E string, so going from frets 10, 9, 8 and 7, just going down chromatically. And then on the B and the G we've got the same 2 notes. We've got an E at the 9th fret and a G at the 8th fret, and we're just arpeggiating these shapes. So the first shape is this one here, so frets 9, 8 and 10. We've got an open D string as well, so, and then we're just taking down the melody on top. So the only thing that's changing is the note on the top string. We're taking it down again, and then one more time. So you just have to figure out which fingers you're going to use for this. So I think the way that's smoothest for me is to use fingers 2, 1, and I'm using my little finger on top, then switching to my 3rd finger, then here, this little triad shape here, I'm using my 2nd finger, barring my 1st finger over the top 2 strings, and then I'm switching fingers here for this E minor triad shape, so using fingers 3, 2 and 1. So we're just arpeggiating these shapes, and the order of the strings is consistent for each of the chords, and it goes like this. We've got 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 and 2. And I think the pick direction is important here. I don't think there are necessarily right or wrongs here, but the way that's smoothest for me is to go down, up, up, down, up, up, down, up. I'm just taking that through the other shapes. And just on that last shape there's a little hammer and pull off from 7 to 8 on the B string, and then we're going round again. Final time we're just strumming that minor chord. So all of that together. On to the verse then, and the basic chords to the verse are quite straightforward. You've got some options how you approach this. You can just play it in a very simple way, or you can throw in some arpeggiated stuff and some fills and make it a little bit more elaborate. But the basic chords we've got are these. It's really just a descending minor key progression. So from E minor, it's going down, D, C, and then this is a B, so a typical minor key chord progression. I think what John Squire is doing is playing them down here in the open position, as it were, with the capo. So we've got a D minor chord, just strumming that once, letting it hang for a couple of bars in C. And then we got this chord here. It's a B flat chord relative to the capo, but the true pitch of it is actually a C chord. It's probably going to get hopelessly confused with this stuff as I'm teaching this. Sometimes I'm going to be referring to the chords in relation to the capo. Other times I'm going to be talking about the actual pitch, but I hope that doesn't get too muddled. But it's this shape here. So we've got, I'm playing this as an A form bar chord here. So. And then we're going to this chord here, which is like an A shape, and this is where you can play a little fill that just connects the two halves of the verse, and you can just play it like this. On the lower strings, they're just double picking most of those notes. And then the verse goes round again. And then to lead into the chorus, I'm doing this. So another one of these little descending bass lines here. Really, it's just an A chord, and then we're dropping the bass note lower. So playing an A chord to start with, and then I'm putting down my pinky here. It's at the 3rd fret relative to the capo. And then the 1st fret here, I'm playing that with my thumb, and then the open string. So that's more or less what Squire seems to be doing when he plays this one live. And for the chorus of the song, we're actually switching to the relative major key, and this is a classic songwriting device. You've got the verses in the minor key, and then to make the chorus lift, you're shifting to the relative major. So if the verses are in E minor, then the relative major to that is G. So it's playing this chord here. It looks like an F shape relative to the capo, but it's a G sound, and for the most part the chorus is quite strummy. So we've just got this bar chord here, then we're switching to this C shape, and then to this shape here. This is the same shape that we had in the verse. And again, here we're doing that descending bass line thing. So we're taking that bar chord shape and just dropping down the bass line. So lifting up the 1st finger, I'm going over to the low E string with my 2nd finger. I'm picking it like that. That's what Squire seems to be doing live. I mean, on the studio recording you can hear there's some higher notes in there, but those are possibly overdubbed by an acoustic guitar. I think if you're just playing it on a single guitar, this is probably the easiest option. So I'm playing the bass note and then playing strings 2, 3 and 4. And then we're back to this G chord. Then we go into the second half of the chorus. I'm just throwing a little fill in there, which is really doubling the bass line. Going round again. The same as before. And then at the end of the chorus, we're just going to this C shape. Strumming that twice, and then we're sort of back round into the verse section. And actually, before we go into the second verse, there's this really nice little instrumental interlude with this arpeggiated guitar part, which on the original recording I think it's played on an acoustic guitar. It's probably overdubbed, but you can play a similar kind of thing on the electric. So what I decided to do was play a part that was like this. kind of idea. So just arpeggiating the basic verse chords really. So starting on a D minor chord, and I'm playing this. So I'm hearing it as this. So it's just the top 3 notes in a D minor chord. It's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. That's the basic rhythm there. And then at the end of the phrase there's just a little melody. So I'm just lifting up my first finger, so you've got the open top string. And then doing a similar thing on this C chord shape. And all you're really hearing on the original recording is those top 3 strings. There might be some bass notes buried in there. You can certainly throw those in if you want to. So it's the same kind of thing on that C chord shape. You really just need to play the top 3 strings, so you can just hold down that one note. Same kind of melody. Then we've got this. So this is just a triad shape. It's just the top part of this chord. So frets 3, 3 and 1. As it's kind of syncopated, the rhythm there, it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then we're going kind of a semitone lower. It's the top part of an A chord. I'm not hearing that little melody at the end of the phrase on those parts there, though you could throw it in, and John Squire does sometimes do that live. He sort of elaborates and throws in some little fills and melodies on those chords as well. But this is the part that I'm playing. Then we're into the next verse, and what you could do is just continue that part through the verse. I think the acoustic guitar does continue playing that, or you could just go back to strumming the basic chords. You've got some options there. I think what I did in my little performance was I just strummed the chords in the first half of the verse, and then in the second half I went back to that arpeggio part. Then after that we've got another chorus. There's a guitar solo which I'm going to come on to in just a moment. Then we've got this instrumental verse which is played with this flange sound. I think that's played with the same basic chords that are played in the earlier verses, so the D minor, the C, and then this B flat or C shape, whatever you want to call it. And there are perhaps just some little embellishments, just lifting up some fingers. So just lifting up my second finger there on the D minor chord. Similar kind of lifting up of the second finger on the C chord. You can do it on this chord as well. Just lift up the first finger. And that sounds great with the flanger. I've just got my Boss BF2 flanger down here, which works really well for that part. Then there's another chorus which I'm playing the same as before, and for the outro we just go back to the intro riff played exactly the same as before. Let's move on to the solo then, and I love this solo. It's a really nice John Squire solo. Not actually that hard to play, I don't think. If you know your basics, if you know your minor pentatonic scale and a few bluesy kind of double stop ideas, then you should be able to have a go at this one. And it's not a bad solo to learn note for note. It's really nicely constructed. The phrasing is really good, so it's quite a kind of educational solo to learn, I think, this one. So I'm just going to go through this one phrase by phrase. Not going to describe every single note here, but if you do know that minor pentatonic scale, you should be able to pick up what's going on. And apart from one phrase, it's all played in pattern 1, position 1 of the E minor pentatonic scale, so up here at the 12th fret. And the opening phrase goes like this. So I've just got some classic minor pentatonic stuff here, bending at the 14th fret on the G. And then we've got 12 on the B and 12 on the top string. Just some coming down the scale there. Then we've got some double stops. So this is on the B and G strings, just at the 12th fret and the 14th fret. I was barring across both those strings with my first finger and then my third finger. So that's the first phrase. Then we've got some more double stops. So this is really nice. This is where we're changing from the E minor chord down to the D, and we've got kind of hitting the chord tones here. He's describing the chord changes. So we've got this nice little double stop idea. So this is again on the B and G strings. We've got frets 9 and 10. Playing that with my first and second fingers, and I'm putting down my third finger at 11 on the G. Just briefly coming down to this shape here, frets 9 and 8. And then we're back up into the main pentatonic scale position with some double stops at the 14th fret. Just bending those two notes slightly. So that second phrase. Notice the phrasing with this solo. It falls very nicely into 2-bar phrases. This is an important consideration when you're taking a solo, how long the length of your phrases are, how long the length of your ideas are. And with this solo it breaks down quite nicely into these 2-bar ideas. So the next phrase goes like this. Another nice 2-bar phrase here, so just more pentatonic stuff with some bends thrown in. So 15th fret on the B, it's coming down the scale, kind of a sequence idea. You're playing the idea on the top 2 strings, you're playing the same idea on the next 2 strings, and then we've got this. It's quite simple. Then next we've got this. So kind of starting low down the scale and then ascending. The first few notes of this phrase are a little bit buried on the original recording, but I'm doing it like this. So sliding into the 14th fret on the A string. Kind of idea. Then we're into this. A unison bend idea. So this is where you're bending a note and then you're playing the same pitch on the next string. So here I'm bending this D up to an E, but I'm fretting another E on the top string, and you've got those 2 notes kind of fighting with each other a little bit. Sometimes they're exactly the same pitch, sometimes they're a little bit out of tune, and it's a really cool kind of device. So really just playing around with that idea for a couple of bars. Then we've got this. So just coming out of that unison bend, just releasing the bend. So some quite simple minor pentatonic stuff there. For the next phrase, we're back to double stops. So double stops on the top 2 strings, and then back to the 14th and 12th fret on the B and G. Just bending at the 14th fret there. And then the last phrase is this. So we've got some funky kind of scratches here, and those same double stop shapes. So ending at the 14th fret on the D string. So that's the solo. I'm just going to piece all of that together for you and try and play it note for note all the way through. I think my version of this is fairly faithful to the original recording. I might be, cheating in a couple of places or doing a couple of things my own way, but I'll try and keep this as close as I can to the original recording. So that's the solo, and a really nice solo, well worth learning in its entirety, I think, particularly if you're a beginner or an early intermediate kind of player. There's lots of nice vocabulary and ideas in that solo. It does seem to be quite a fixed solo. When you see Squire performing the song live, he always plays the same solo, so it's kind of a composed solo, which is an integral part of the song. Let me give you a rundown of the gear that I'm using today. And on the original recording, I'm not entirely sure exactly what would have been used. Of course, you can find out what gear John Squire was using in this particular period, and there are some nerdy websites where you can look at all the different guitars and pedals, and being a nerd, I find that stuff quite interesting. And in the early days of the Stone Roses, Squire seemed to favour a Gretsch guitar. He had a few pedals as well, as an Ibanez chorus, a fuzz face pedal, and one or two others I think as well. But whether or not those were used on this particular recording, I'm not exactly sure. I'm just trying to get close to the sound with the gear that I've got. So I'm using my Jazzmaster. It's a reissue 60s Jazzmaster, going through my Fender Princeton amp. And you will need a few pedals if you want to get the sound right on this one. Most importantly, you're going to need some kind of modulation sound, and it sounds to me like a chorus pedal, and John Squire was using an Ibanez chorus pedal round about this period, I think. So what I've gone for, I've got an Ibanez chorus mini pedal, so hopefully that comes quite close to the kind of sounds that John Squire is getting. It certainly seems quite close to my ears. So I've got that chorus pedal on for the entire performance. I've got a little bit of overdrive coming from my J Rocket Archer pedal, and then for the solo I just stomped on my Rat pedal just for a little bit of a volume boost, just for a little bit more overdrive. There's not much overdrive coming from the Rat. I've got the distortion knob set quite low, but I think for the solo I just needed a little bit of a boost, a little bit more drive. And then of course for the section after the solo, there's that flanger, and that's where I'm using my Boss flanger pedal. That's the BF2 that I mentioned earlier. That's all for today. Hope you've enjoyed it. And as I've already mentioned, I have written out a tab for this one, and you can find that up on my Patreon page. You can pay what you like to get access to that and a whole bunch of other tabs. And my backing track is also going to be up on the Patreon page. Thanks a lot for watching. See you next time.